Hello, beautiful, extraordinary people. How are we this evening, or this morning, or whatever time of day it is for you? I am filming on Sunday evening, so yep, for me it's evening. Hi everyone. I hope everybody is doing well and that your 2024 is off to a bang up start. We're going to do a little WIP N Chat this evening. So and as you can see, I'm still taking a little breather from my huge canvas with the square drills. But don't think that I haven't been working on it. So I'm going to show you just so I can prove it to you. So as you can see, I finished the whole first layer, or the bottom of the page from whence I started, and I have sectioned off the next group of sections. It's sectioned off the next group of sections. Anyway, you get what I mean. So I am working on it. Just have to do it in manageable bursts as my sanity and patience allows with these square drills. So that's happening. Also, in one of my recent hauls, I unbagged a canvas that I said I was pretty sure that it was Ann Stokes, but I just couldn't prove it. Well, it is an Ann Stokes, and I am going to prove it. You know, because good to my word. You guys know that. So, yeah, let me get to the page that has the proof on it, just on principle here. I love this Ann Stokes book of art that I got from Amazon. It has been such fun. It was fun to read. It was fun to look at the artwork. It is just fun, you guys. So, yeah, if you're looking for a really cool Ann Stokes book, I really think you should get it. Here we go. Look familiar, guys? This is the artwork from the canvas that I showed you on the unboxing. It is actually called Once Upon a Time, and she painted this artwork in 2013. So there you are. Yep. I'm telling you, I absolutely love her artistry. Love, love, love it. Look how fun this one would be. This one was a diamond painting. This one's called Dragon Dancer, also from 2013. But I love it. I love the look on the dragon's face, like, okay, dance with you or eat you. I'm not sure which, but anyway. Yeah, so, and you'll notice I'm working on the one that had all of the dragons on it that I pointed out were pieces of Ann Stokes artwork. Today we're going to be working on this little section here. It's a lady with her unicorn, and it is called Solace. Here's the original artwork. She did this artwork in 2016. So, and she said, "This picture is about the bond of love and friendship between two beings. The forest is dark and foreboding. In contrast, the unicorn's white body and glowing horns shine out like a beacon of light to this melancholic lady. A heart pendant hangs from her hand, suggesting a lost love for which her unicorn companion now provides comfort." So there you go. Now you know. All right, and there it is, right on our canvas. But seriously, you guys, if you like Ann Stokes, get this book. Worth every penny. Okay. Yeah. How was everyone's week this week? Mine was a little crazy. Not that that's an unusual thing. I tend to have crazy weeks, but I had a little extra kind of oomph in it. So, yeah, what was everyone else's like? I did tell you guys, I think, in a past video, might have even been a past WIP N Chat, By the way, WIP stands for Work in Progress if you're new to diamond painting. Feel free to get out whatever your latest work in progress is and work alongside, or use this as a podcast, or whatever floats your boat. And just glad you're here to join in. So yeah, too much. There we go. I mentioned in a prior video, probably a WIP and chat, that I have 3 sons, all grown men now. The youngest of whom resides at home with us. But that 2/3 of my kids came to my life through adoption, and 1 came through biology. Okay, so I found it interesting that my oldest son, my kids are now 34, 30, and the youngest will be 27 in March. So I was talking to my oldest son, who is the father of 2 of my grandsons, and he wanted to know, he asked me probably, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, might be longer than that now because I lost a year or so with the pandemic, but I think it's been a couple years ago, if I would be interested in doing a podcast centering around adoption and the people involved in it, and because he knew that I had done more than one type. I had open adoption with him, which is where you meet with the birth mother and or birth father before the baby's born, and you make up a birthing plan together, and then the baby is born and you take it home from the hospital and they sign paperwork, and everything goes hopefully according to Hoyle, and in some cases, the birth family stays in the child's life throughout. Sometimes they come over for Sunday dinners. Sometimes it's just pictures. Sometimes it's phone calls. All of that is supposed to be worked out ahead of when the child gets here, and sometimes even before you're matched with somebody. So you have to do, this is when we did the open adoption. So at that time, because this is mid to late 1988, and I had been free of kidney failure for probably 6 months to a year, and I had treatment that they told me at the time, we don't know why this works. We just know that sometimes it works, and we don't know why. And because we don't know why, you could relapse at some point, just arbitrarily. So, we're going to have to check you every 4 to 6 months and pay attention to what your body says. And, and telling all this to someone who, had just turned 20, not too long before that, was, kind of a lot. And I had grown so frustrated with doctors because I had been sick about 1.5 years. I started getting sick in late 1986 and in early 1987, but I kind of, tried to ignore it for a while, and everybody thought, I just wasn't feeling well because I was nervous because I was getting married for the first time, and, just the whole thing. And then they found out we got married, then I got back from my honeymoon. And then within a month or so after that, and we got married on Valentine's Day of 87. And shortly after that, I was really sick. And I will tell you, a lot of medical community failure, because they were sure when I started telling them, hey, something's not right. I really don't feel good. I'm throwing up all the time. I can't keep anything down. I can't sleep. I'm miserable. I'm starting to retain fluid. Oh, you're pregnant. Because, that's what they figured out, that I had just gotten married a few months back. So, clearly I had to be pregnant. Okay, people, the time I got married, I had been on birth control like 4 years. Like, this was not, what was going on. And it didn't matter how many times I said it or to how many medical personnel. They didn't listen. 14 pregnancy tests later, they finally figured out, what do you know? I guess you're not pregnant. Yeah, no shit, Shirley. So then it became an issue of, oh my God, what could it be? And what made me mad is really all they needed to do was run a basic plus panel blood screen, and they would have found it. But no, nobody did. So I got sicker and sicker and sicker. And I mean, so sick. I saw every physician except a podiatrist, I think, in the next few months, but it took them 7.5 months to figure out what happened, and they still didn't find it. What happened was, because my kidneys were failing and white cells were beginning to cloud around my bloodstream, my white cells went into my eyes. And one day I woke up and I let out a scream, and everybody came running. And the lens of my eye was sort of stuck to the iris, and it was squishing out the pupil so that my pupil looked like a fried egg. And I was getting beyond double vision. Like, it was double vision, but everything was screwed up. The colors were screwed up, the peripheral vision, everything was just, and I went to sleep, I could see, and I woke up and I couldn't, and I just screamed. Well, of course, they made an appointment immediately with an ophthalmologist. Sorry, guys, the bark machines are home and doing their thing. So we went to see the ophthalmologist, and he took a history, of course, what's been going on, how's your health? And I said, no, it's funny you should ask. I've been very sick. I've been throwing up every single day for months on end. I can't hold anything down. My hair is falling out because I've lost 43 pounds in 5 months. So yeah, it hasn't been good. And he looked in my eyes and he goes, okay, stay here. I'll be right back. Next thing I found out was he had gone across the street and down the hall a little bit to the nephrology office, spoke to the director of nephrology, which is whose office that happened to be, and told him that he had a patient sitting in his chair right now that he needed to see this minute. Like, clear your day kind of a thing. Because doctors used to do that for one another. I don't think you could get that to happen today. But again, 1987. So he said, of course, have her come right over. Well, by then, I couldn't even walk. I was so weak. So my new husband, who had been my husband for not very many months, picked me up, carried me across the street, into the office, into the waiting room, signed me in, carried me into the exam room, where the director of nephrology came in. And he himself took blood, which try getting that to happen nowadays too. But this is back when, this country had actual health care. I won't even talk about what they have now. I'm so disgusted. But anyway, he came over to me after taking the blood, took it down to the lab, which was not very far, a couple of doors down, and waited for the results, which they did immediately. Got the results, he came back and told me that I was not only in kidney failure, but that I only had 8% use of my kidneys. And at that time, if you got down to 5%, then you better hope you qualified. They put you on dialysis and then on the transplant list. So 8% was not a lot. I was just so relieved they finally figured it out, because guys, I never ever in my life want to be that sick again. And remember, I'm 19 and a newlywed, or I had, it's about 19. It wasn't 20 yet. And so they told my new husband and my parents that there were 2 potential treatments that they could try, but that I would probably only be able to survive one. We wouldn't have an opportunity to try both. So my mother said, what are they? And what is the treatment like? What are the side effects? Like, spit it out, man. And so he said, well, one of them is Cytoxan, which happens to be a chemotherapy medication with very unpleasant chemotherapy type side effects. And the other one was prednisone, which is a steroid. Okay. So he explained, what it was, and that, yes, there are some difficult side effects from the steroid, but it's, less terrible than the other one. However, we don't know why it works. So we just know that it does. However, there's chance of relapse because, again, we don't know why it works. So we all talked about it together, and everybody made the decision that we would go ahead and we would try steroids and hope for the best. So I spent a year and a half on massive doses. My starting dose was 60 milligrams a day, which is a dose that they normally use on organ transplant patients. And let me tell you what, it did have some pretty gnarly side effects. But after being on it for a couple of weeks, I woke up, and for the first time in a year and a half. Now, before this, they had told my parents, you need to contact whatever kind of clergy you have, because we don't think she's going to make it. So if anybody in the family, wants to come and say goodbye or do whatever, that they should do that. Problem was, I heard them say that to my parents, and I was livid. As sick as I was so mad. I'm like, really? Body is not even cold yet, and you're already, writing me off. Well, I got news for you, bud. So I dug down as deep as I could, got a little tenacity out of there, and I told my parents, you don't need to call anybody. You just need to give me some time. So they waited a week, and I was going twice a week for blood draws. You guys, in 1 year, I had 78 vials of blood drawn. I was so ready to put in a faucet, I can't even tell you. So finally did that, and then suddenly, about a week and a half after that whole conversation he'd had with my parents and my still newlywed husband, they said, my God, I think it's actually working. I hadn't felt better yet or done anything, but what happened was, a few days after that visit back to the doctor where he said it was improving, I woke up one morning, I just randomly, I said, I'm hungry. And remember, I hadn't been hungry in a year and a half. So my parents jumped up and down. My husband smiled and hugged my frail little frame. And everybody was happy. And then relearning to eat was rough, because my body was so starved that every time I would eat, I would shake with convulsions, because my body was every part of my body was trying to steal food at once because it hadn't had any. So fortunately, my grandmother came over because my parents were working and my husband was working. And my grandmother came over and made me drink water because the doctor said if she can't hold down water, we're going to have to hospitalize her. And I was bound and determined to stay out of a hospital. So, yeah, my grandmother came over and poured that. Oh, my God. I kept telling her she was trying to drown me. But, that's my little Native American grandma. She's like, we must do what we must do. So, yep, every single day she would come over and, she would tell me at noon, come on, Wendy, you're 2 glasses down from yesterday. You've got to catch up. And, oh, God, I just didn't want another thing to do with water, and she made me drink it. So as a result, she's partially responsible for why I'm here today. So anyway, all of that happened. Okay, when I finally started to get better, and again, it took me about 18 months. And they had told me, hey, again, things are looking good. Pay attention to how you feel. Yeah, we don't know if this is going to stay working or if you're going to relapse at some point because, yep, we don't know why it worked, but, we're glad it did. And, you're going to have to really know what's going on in your body. Oh, okay. Well, I freaked out. I went from being the person who wasn't interested in marriage or family. Like that wasn't a thing. I wanted to travel. I thought about, what kind of work I wanted to do because I had been trying a couple of different things, and I finally decided I would probably get into accounting because my mother was in accounting. My dad was for a while, although he went on to other things, but yeah, my mother was in it, and I'm like, there are things I really like about that because I don't like math. Don't get me wrong. Math and I are not friends. But I knew that I could work anywhere because accounting people are necessary evils. Nobody likes them. Everyone has to have them. So I knew I could get a job. I knew it would be in a climate-controlled office. And I knew that it would be Monday through Friday. And that was all I needed to know. And that when I left work, I could leave it at work. So that all appealed to me. So because what I decided was, after I didn't die when I was supposed to, something that happens when you have to face your own mortality, I think especially even more so when you're young, is that you get perspective. You really do find out what's important and what's not. And the one thing I wish I could do for so many of you people is to make it clear to you that nobody's going to care what your job was. Nobody's going to care how much money you had in your account. Nobody is going to care if your bills were paid or what kind of car you drove. It's just so irrelevant. When you are headed out, it's just not going to matter. The only thing I could think of, and I had a lot of time to think because I couldn't do anything else. I was too sick. So all I could think about was arguments I'd had with people, things I had said that I wish I hadn't said, people that I wish I had had time to apologize to. I suddenly was destroyed because I hadn't been a parent. I had not had a chance to be a mom. And I didn't realize how important that was because when you have all the time in the world, or you think you do, it doesn't come up to the surface that tomorrow's not promised. And then when you learn that the hard way, oh boy, do things change. So I talked to my doctor. I said, I want to have a kid. Is that going to be a problem? And he said, well, probably not, but you are going to have twice the blood volume and twice the work for your kidneys. And remember, they've been out of commission. So, we have to keep a close eye on you. And okay, fine. Thank you. And then we went immediately from that to infertility. You don't know frustration till we went in. We tried for almost a year to have a baby. Nothing happened. So we went to fertility experts, and they said that I had polycystic ovaries and my husband had a low sperm count, and that we would never have children together, that we probably wouldn't even have them separately with other people, but together we were definitely not going to have children. So we left there, and I cannot tell you the devastation, because you mourn the loss of the child that will never be. I mean, you really do. You know, it just goes out the window. You know, you're just like, well, that child that we want is not going to look like us, or, you know, have our mannerisms, or, you know, be like our side of the family. Because now, if we want to have children, we're going to have to adopt. So, that was a hard place. That took us a little bit of time. I was ready to adopt much earlier than my first husband was. And so I said, well, then you're going to have to let me know when you're ready, because, you know, this is a venture that's going to be both of us. So if you're not ready, then we're not going forward. So you let me know, because I was already ready. I could not have cared less about that whole pregnancy birth thing. I was more than happy to not have anything to do with that, because I had already been through the ringer, and I know that the biological part, I knew it then, of, you know, creation, for lack of a better word, is not what made you a parent. I knew it then. I know it even more now, definitively. Parenting starts after that kid gets here. So I waited for almost another year before my then spouse finally said, you know what, I'm ready. I said, are you sure? Because if your mindset is that, you know, you can't figure some stuff out, then we're just not going to go forward. And nope. He wanted to be a father more than he wanted to worry about issues that are really non-issues. I mean, and I still hear people today talking about it, you know, I don't know if I could love a child that's not, you know, technically mine. I don't know if I could feel the same way about that child. Biggest bunch of bullshit around. I'm just telling you guys outright. It's the stupidest thing ever. I promise, when that baby gets placed in your arms and you take it home, your heart doesn't care how it got there. You will love that child every bit as much as you're capable of. So it's really a non-issue. But, you know, you have to meet people where they are. So I had to wait a little extra time for him to figure out that he was being ridiculous. But I also wasn't going to make that decision for him. I could have pushed it and said, well, you know, I don't care what your deal is. You know, I may or may not have a relapse, and I want to be a parent. And so, yeah, we're going to go ahead and you'll have to catch up. You know, I mean, I could have, but I was not going to give him that out. I didn't want him to be resentful of me or the child or the situation because he felt pushed into it. So I waited and tried not to be resentful myself. It was hard, but it was fine. You know, we had carried on and did our thing, and, you know, I got more months of recovery under my belt. So that was ultimately probably a good thing. When he finally came around, I was like, phew, thank goodness. Wow, that took some time. Okay. So here we are. We enter the adoption arena. And that was a learning experience too, because what we found out, and now remember, we live in California. I don't know what it is everywhere else all over the country. I did ultimately find out about a couple places sort of indirectly without really meaning to, that in California, if you are waiting to adopt a child, when you get the child placed in your house, if you do an open adoption, which at that time was new, it was a pioneer type thing at that time, because remember, this is early 1989, probably late January, early February. We had called around. We thought, well, of course, we will go to an attorney, and find out how we go about this. And they basically said, oh yeah, I do get birth parents in here, and they do relinquish, and then, we go through the whole gambit and we do the whole thing. But I have a 30% failure rate. We looked at each other. What does that mean? Well, that means that 3 out of 10 adoptions do not finalize for one reason or another. The biological parent takes the child back. The child is born with disabilities. The adoptive parents decide not to go through with it. There's a variety of reasons, but basically, I have a 30% failure rate. Well, that scared us because we thought that was pretty high when you're talking about, human beings. So we decided, well, let's talk to an adoption agency. Maybe that's the way we should go. Because we also, we were middle class people. There was not, lots of money hanging around. But we were young and we were both working and we had good credit. So that helped. But, we were not in a position to pay, exorbitant amounts of money. Which is probably good because it kept us out of the black market. But it was also kind of disheartening when we kept finding out what some of these expenses were going to be like. And so we went to an adoption agency and they said, oh, well, our success rate is 85%. We thought, oh, great. Well, this is a good sign. Then they said, however, this is 100% closed adoption. You will never see the birth parents. They will never see you. You will never know the child's background at any time. We thought, wow. When you think about it, that's a lot to have to live with. Because again, not everybody is completely honest. And sometimes you literally don't know. And you're just relying on somebody else who's going to be giving this child up to be 100% honest on paperwork that you're ultimately going to receive later about the child's biological history. So that was also a little disconcerting. So we thought, well, maybe we just need to go to the county. Maybe that's what we need to do. Well, and we had already decided that for the first child that we wanted we wanted a baby because we didn't know if we would ever have an actual, baby again. But we wanted a baby. So we didn't care if the baby was biracial. We didn't care if there was, mental health issues in the family. Like none of that was disqualifying. And they said, well, here's the thing. If you wanted a child of any age or a sibling group with kids that have special needs, you could be parents tomorrow. But if you wanted a child under the age of 5 without some kind of disability or baggage, it's an 8 to 10 year wait. We almost fell over. I'm like, my God, 8 to 10, wow. Which just kind of floored us because we thought, the county is where everybody goes, right? Well, apparently not. So we were pretty discouraged. So we ended up kind of looking around, and then we saw in a town that was about an hour and a half away from us that there was a place that handled open adoption. Okay, we didn't know all the ins and outs about that, but that was one place we had not tried yet, and we were pretty discouraged with what we had found out. So we thought, okay, well, nothing ventured, let's call them. So we called them and they said, Yeah, hi. So we have an 85% success rate. Oh, well, okay, that's much better than a 30% failure rate. And, we, our wait is 6 to 18 months. Ooh, getting better all the time. And then we said, well, what is the fee that we're looking at? And they said, well, basically, it's it's $3,500 to bring you in as clients and put your birth mother letter in the book. And when you're matched with a biological parent or parents, then there's a $1,500 match fee. And then, all's right with the world. Now, the other thing, too, is in California, biological parents have the right to change their mind for any reason under the sun. They have 45 days. I can't tell you how long that 6 weeks is. It's an eternity. And every time the phone rings and every time there's a knock on the door during that time frame, your heart just stops. I mean, it's horrible. But we thought, well, gosh, this sounds like a much better situation for us specifically because, well, if we maxed out a couple of credit cards, we could come up with that. And wow, 6 to 18 month wait. Wow, that's much better. Hey, that's wonderful. So they said, okay, well, come to the orientation meeting, and we'll go over all the specifics. And then you'll be asked to put a birth mother letter in the book. What in the world is a birth mother letter? We had no idea. We had no idea. Basically, it's like a resume. You put down on one sheet of paper kind of a summary about yourselves, who you are, why you think, why you want a baby, why you think you would be good parents. And you have to put a picture. And then anytime that a birth mother calls and says, hi, my name is Jane and I'm X amount of months pregnant and I want to give it up for adoption, they ask a series of questions. They ask you the same questions. So they say things like, do you want to be contacted if, the baby is biracial? Do you want to be contacted or considered for a placement if, there's mental health issues among the biological family? Do you want to be contacted if the baby's father is part of the picture? Do you want to be contacted if the extended family in the biological family wants to be a part of the baby's life? Where are your boundaries? And so you tell them what you're comfortable with. And then when a birth mother calls that has a pregnancy that fits that bill, they pull all the birth mother letters for all the people that fit that bill. So the birth mother we ended up working with received 121 birth mother letters. Now, I will tell you, she was 14 going on 10, and lived in Florida, was the oldest of 3 kids. Mom worked and had welfare supplementation, and basically mom made it clear that, listen, we can't take on another mouth to feed. There's no way. So this is what's going to happen. So, immediately your thoughts are, well, my gosh, how does that little poor thing decide with 121 of these letters of people on there and the whole thing? Well, I'll talk to you about her criteria later. But basically, she narrowed it down to us and 2 other couples. And so one of the reasons is because she was a dog lover. She was a cat lover. So anybody whose letter had a dog in it, she tossed. She also wanted her child to be the only one in the house because she always had to share everything with her brother and sister. So anybody who already had a child, they got pulled out and trashed. Okay, so at the end of the day, that left her around 60 or so letters. And then she put them up on the walls in the hallway. So every time she went to the bathroom, which is, often when you're pregnant, she looked at them all and eliminated another one. So after a few days, she was down to us and 2 other couples, because the agency tells them, get it down to 3 and then do a phone interview and get a feel for who the people are, and then choose who you want to work with, and then let us know, and we will facilitate all that. Okay. So what does that mean for potential adoptive parents? Well, one of the things it means is you have to put on your answering machine that you will accept collect calls, and then you have to wait and hope that you get a call. And then you have to hope that that call is, comes to fruition and that you're selected. It's an agonizing time. It really, really is. So we went through that whole thing. We went to, we found all that out when we went to the orientation, which was in April. Now, when we were talking about what we wanted our birth mother letter to look like. Okay, we understood that this was going to go out to somebody along with, hundreds of others potentially. And so we wanted to stand out. So I decided, okay, how are we going to pull someone's focus? Because, they were all formatted. They gave you kind of like a template kind of a thing, so that they, you could just follow it and it wouldn't be too hard. Well, I didn't like it because I thought, yeah, but if you look like everyone else's letter, what's going to be special about you? I felt that we were at a detriment because we were young. We did not look like we were parent material. We, didn't look established. And so we looked like a 20 and 21-year-old, which is what we were. And so I thought, man, this isn't going to be good. I thought we got to do something else that's going to catch someone's eye. So, as I also said in a prior video, I included a poem that I wrote. I thought, what would I want to know? If I were going to be a biological parent and I was going to be giving my child to strangers, what would I want to know about them? So I included a poem that I wrote that I titled, "To Tell of an Adoption." So it goes like this. To tell of an adoption. My child came to me with little eyes shining bright and said, "Where did I come from?" And I knew the time was right. "You came from a woman who loved you and wanted for you the best. So unto us she gave you. We in turn were blessed." That must have been enough for now. I decided after a while, because on that sleeping angel's face was a contented little smile. By me. And I placed it right in the middle of the page. And then we put a little bit about who we were and what we were looking for and why we wanted to be parents, and in the picture we put our 2 cats with us because that was our family at the time. And when we went in to meet with our case manager person, who is supposed to tell you how they want you to do it and answer any questions you have, we already had 25 letters ready to go. So we gave them to her and she goes, "Oh, you already have letters?" Yep, we sure do. And here's the down payment. And we'd really like those to go into the book today, please. And she was like, "Okay, well, we're going to need about another 120 of these." We looked at each other. We said, "Okay." In my mind, I'm thinking just the printing charges of the photos, because there was it wasn't digital, people. This was 35mm era. We had to go get those photos printed. And I was thinking, well, here comes the last of the credit cards. Oh my God. So we did. So that was in April. And my oldest son was born at the end of August of that same year. It was a whirlwind. A lot happened in those 3 months. A lot happened in those 3 months. I won't get into the details, maybe some other time. But needless to say, it was quite a thing. Especially having to tell our employers that, by the way, we're going to be needing to take maternity leave and paternity leave, and we're going to be out, and this whole thing. And my boss basically looked at me like I had 3 heads and said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Yeah, we're getting a baby." And she said, "Well, you have to give us notice." I said, "I just found out yesterday, but you're asking for time off at the end of August." Yep. That's the thing with adoption. You don't get a lot of notice. There's none of this 9 months to prepare people. Nope. You have to have your home study done. Part of that process is you have to have a financial affidavit filed. You have to have a physical from your doctor. You have to answer psychological questionnaires. And I mean with questions like, at what age will you no longer allow your children in the bathroom with you? I mean, really, you guys. Yeah, it's a whole thing. So it was a lot. Now, we had the home study was in actually 2 parts. You had one where someone came out and looked at your house and made sure that you didn't have any code violations, that you did have a fire extinguisher, and that basically, you weren't hiding children under the bed, and that your house was suitable to bring a child into. Okay, we had already had that part done. Then the other part was a social worker who was going to be overseeing your case came out to meet with you and talk about it and discuss what was happening and what your plans were and how you were going to go about it. And again, remember, open adoption was new. It was in its infancy, literally. It made everyone nervous. So we were still waiting for her. She had just made the appointment to come out with us for after Labor Day weekend. Well, our son was born August 29th. By the time she came out to talk to us, we'd already taken him home from the hospital. Oops, sorry. I just conked the phone. So, yeah, she came out to say hi, and we answered the door with a newborn. That was something. But what could she do, right? I mean, that's the way it worked. But, yeah, you could see that she was just really bewildered. Then she wanted to know, well, was this the child of a relative? I said, no, it wasn't kinship care. Well, was it an agency? Yeah, but it was an open adoption. It was an independent adoption agency. Well, what does that mean? Well, where is the birth mother? Well, she's from Florida, and we flew her out because we wanted to have the baby born in California. Why? Okay, let me tell you why. Again, this is 1989. Open adoption is new. If we had flown to Florida, Florida did not recognize open adoption, period, end of discussion. There was no working around it. So if we had gone to Florida to pick the baby up and fly the baby home, which was supposed to be how this all worked, we were kidnapping, since they don't acknowledge open adoption. So that was a mess. We had to do what they call the interstate compact, which is basically saying, okay, well, she's going to give birth out here so that California law applies and everybody understands one another, even though she's a resident of the other state. And I mean, it was a whole thing. I mean, really, you guys, I can't even tell you. I don't know what the status is with Florida. I hope they've, become awake and realized not to be ridiculous anymore. But yeah, that was how it was then. And I was terrified to tell this little, she was now 15, barely, Again, she looked like she was 12. She didn't even have all her adult teeth. When she got off the plane with her little beach ball belly in front of her, wearing tennis shoes that were untied because that was the style, she looked like a little kid, all 5'1" of her. So I couldn't believe that her mother let her go clear across the country to strangers, but you know, people do weird things. Anyway, so we told her that, you know, she had flown out. The baby was born here at a local hospital. We gave her the name of the hospital, and that she had already flown home. We ended up having to fly her mother out because she just didn't know if she could do it at the last minute. Oh, you guys just don't even know the half of it. But by the time the social worker got out there for the interview process, all of that had already happened. And so, yeah, it was a whole thing. So then the waiting game started. Okay, now remember, before she left the hospital, now, when she went into labor, I was at work. I left work. I picked her up, took her to the hospital. They assessed her, decided it was false labor, but I had been watching her for like a half hour while they were getting everything set up. And I thought, yeah, false my behind. I don't think so. And they decided, oh yes, it's Braxton Hicks, and sent us home. And she goes, really, we're going home? I said, no, we're not going home. I had to pay for an OBGYN out of pocket because that, you know, she couldn't get on Medi-Cal because she was on Medicaid in Florida and she wasn't changing her residency. So it was a whole thing. Everything was at our expense, everyone. It's interesting. Our attorney at the time said it was the most expensive adoption he had had to date. And he'd been in the business 20 years at that point. It was $23,803.54. And I will never, ever forget that. It's 35 years ago. And it's right on the tip of my tongue. And that was a year that the two of us together made $32,000. So you understand, right? Where we are with that? Okay. So, we'd had to fly her mother out last minute. That was a whole nother. So by the time everything was said and done, we had no credit. We had no money. You know, it was all we could do to raise him now because, you know, the adoption itself nearly bankrupted us. So, but there was no way around it. I mean, she was supposed to move to a Medicaid-funded hospital after she had the baby. And he was supposed to go to Kaiser because we had Kaiser at the time and he was going to be under our insurance. Well, at the last minute, the Medicaid hospital wouldn't take her. And he went to the neonatal unit intensive care for 4 days. So he couldn't be moved. So everybody billed us. Yep. It was pretty unbelievable. And again, here we are, 20. Well, I was about to turn 21. I was still 20. And my husband was 21. And, yeah, it was one for the books, you guys. But, yep, I took him home, and now she, at the last minute, as I was saying, at the hospital, wasn't sure she could go through with it and the whole thing. So let me tell you what, even when she got on the plane to go back to Florida, which was a relief for me because, you know, I couldn't with her. Now, they sent a counselor down from where the agency we went through was located to the hospital where the baby was born, which was about an hour and a half away, and, you know, provided counseling to her. We all had to go in with it together. The hospital social worker was livid. They told the agency that we're not accepting any more of your adoptions unless you come down and have a conversation with us. And it was a whole thing. And so they said, you know, they told our birth mother, you know, your situation is still exactly what it was when you came out here. You know, what's different? Well, he wasn't here then, because now remember, she's 15 in postpartum. Oh yeah, she was a gigantic pain in everyone's ass. The nurses were furious with her. We heard one of them say to the other one, "There goes the buzzer for your favorite patient." And it happened to be her room, and I thought, oh boy, this will be fun. So yeah, we didn't know, and they said, well, how are you going to pick the baby up? You don't even have a car seat. And she's like, oh, I was thinking maybe I could borrow. And I said, yeah, no, you can't, because our car seat's going to be for our baby. So you're going to have to figure out how to get one. And her mom said, Brandy, we don't have the money to do that. So I said, and you're going to have to actually purchase an airline seat, because, clearly we wouldn't be doing that, and your tickets are already purchased. So, but he'll be in a car seat, so you're going to have to actually have an actual seat. And at that time, that's what you had to do when you flew with a baby. And so all of these things went on, and all of us were totally in tears, because we were devastated, because we knew she was changing her mind. She was devastated because she felt like nobody was on her side, including her mother. And, it's true, her mother wasn't on her side. And I just felt terrible for her, because I couldn't imagine being in her position. And so it was a really horrible few days. She finally did sign the papers. She came up and asked us, can I go in and say goodbye to him? And we were like, well, of course you can. So she went in by herself into the neonatal room and intensive care and talked to him. Nobody knows what she said to this day. But she talked to him for probably 45 minutes and cried, and, and then she finally came out. And even now, 35 years later, I think about, how devastating it was to watch this little bitty kid. I mean, really, she was tiny. And she normally was 95 pounds and 5 feet tall. And so she had gained 50 pounds with him. So she was 145 pounds when we saw her with this little beach ball in front of her. From the back, you couldn't even tell she was pregnant. And just watching her be so devastated was awful. But anyway, she came out, and she came up to my husband and I and said, please make sure he has a good life. And, clearly we said we would. And we did everything we could to make sure that that was the truth. So now that 15-year-old is nearly 50 years old. She has 2 other children. One doesn't speak to her, and one can't stand her. But, they do what they do, But she had 2 more kids by 2 other men. My son's birth father went to prison just a few days after she found out she was pregnant, and remains there to this day. So take of that what you will. And so, yeah, it was a lot, guys. But let me tell you, he is the absolute apple of his mother's eye. And I adore him. And even though, we adopted another child, which through a different way, we went through the county, and we adopted a child who was pretty severely drug affected, which turned out not to be the most difficult thing. The most difficult thing was finding out when he was 2, he was attachment disordered. That was the hard part. So, but yeah, and then when he was 6, and our middle son that we adopted was 2.5, I find out that not only was my vertigo a pregnancy, but I was already in the 5th month before I knew he was coming. So yeah, that's the whole thing in a nutshell. That's how all my kids got to me. Now, what was interesting about this, you guys, I had decided early on that if I was going to have kids, I was going to have one perfect girl child. That was it. That was it. One perfect girl. Instead, I had 3 boys with special needs. Look at that. So, don't know what that means, except I think God has a sense of humor, but I don't know. Anyway, so that just goes to show you that, you know, life doesn't always go according to plan. What you think is going to happen is not always what happens. But to put your mind at ease, if you know anyone who's thinking about adopting, if you know that there's someone in your life or you're thinking about it and someone is struggling with that decision because they just don't know if they could feel the same way about an adopted, tell them yes, they absolutely can. They absolutely can. And they will. The kids never have a problem. They know. They know who their parent is. They're not interested in who donated their DNA. That's never, ever in the front of their mind. They know. As far as they're concerned, you're the one that comes in when they don't feel good. You're the one that rocks them to sleep. You're the one that scares the monsters away. It doesn't occur to them to think of anyone else as mom or dad. So it's the adults that make things difficult. And that's just the reality. So yeah, if you're coming at it and you're going to be adopting after, infertility or multiple miscarriages or whatever it is, you make sure that you talk to a therapist and you clear all that crap out, because you're not settling for second best. You're not taking what's available. No, that's not true. And they don't deserve to be treated like that. And if they say they grew up feeling different, that's on you. They're only going to feel different if you treat them different. Now remember, I have 1 child through biology and 2 children through adoption. So I'm talking about this with authority. So again, you should do it. And you should remember how lucky you are that through some miracle, and it's a miracle, this child that's going to end up at your house, out of all the houses in the world it could have ended up in, that's the real miracle. Biology is biology. Every animal in nature can do it. But when you adopt a child, you never know who that child's going to be till you get there. Till someone brings that child to your arms. Understand that journey that they took to get there, they were destined for you. Treat them that way. Be so grateful that they ended up there. If you are going to take an older child, be prepared for what goes with that. Remember, they've already had a life before they met you. It might have been very tumultuous. So you have to take that into account. Yeah. They might have a different faith than you do. They might have been told, shenanigans by somebody. They may have lived in a crack house. They may have been born hurt. There may have been abuse or starvation. There could have been a lot of things. So, yeah, which we can talk about in the next one, because I've been talking at you guys now for just a little over an hour, which is more than long enough of your Sunday evening for me to take up. But I just wanted to share that with you. My son, and since he did ask me if I'd be willing to do a podcast, I said, sure, I would. I consider adoption to be one of the finest things in my life that I've ever done. I am thrilled to death that I have my 3 sons, and they're all wonderful young men. My oldest son and my middle son have children. My older son has 2 boys. One's about to turn 7 and one just turned a year old. My middle son has a daughter that's in another state that he doesn't really see, who's about to turn 7. He also has a 5-year-old son and is married, and they're about to have a little girl at the end of March. I'm excited for that situation. And yeah, and they call me, and and I love it. Every time I hear, "Hi, Mom, it's me. How you doing? Miss you, Mom." I mean, there is no feeling and no words to express what that feels like. So you have to do it. If you really are thinking about it, please do it. Don't worry about all the gobbledygook and all the crap that other people say. Just do it. Just do it. Does it sometimes come with difficulty? Yeah, it does. And do you know that adoptive parents can have postpartum depression? Yeah, they sure can, because it's not always about hormones. Sometimes it's about expectations and what you thought was going to be and then the reality of it. So the difference is adoptive parents don't feel comfortable saying that because everybody's so busy talking to them and telling them how they should feel. Well, aren't you happy to have this baby? You wanted this baby so much. Okay, but maybe you didn't know that you were going to have a child with colic and you weren't going to sleep for 3 months. Yeah, might that be a different feeling? Yeah, it might. So, yep. But I prepared a seminar, even a 4-part series for people who were thinking about adoption, to talk about, what kind of things have you considered and what kind of things have you not considered. So let me know in the comments if that's something you guys would like to hear more about, or if you've had your fill, because I totally get it. Anyway, so my older son and I at some point are hopefully going to be doing a podcast about all factors about adoption from, the adoptee's standpoint and the adoptive parent standpoint. And, he does not have a fantastic relationship with his biological mother. Sometimes it's combustible, and which I was afraid of, and I told him, going in, that he might find that this is not what he thinks it's going to be, which was even more true for her than it was for him. But they do, they tolerate each other, and they can be civil, and they can talk. So who knows? Maybe he'll even interview her. I don't know. But anyway, if that ever comes to fruition, I'll keep you guys posted. So, yeah. So, again, let me know if there's any interest in continuing this topic. Otherwise, I'll shift to a new topic for the next WIP N Chat. But I hope everyone has a wonderful, wonderful evening, and that your week starts out awesome, because you know what? You're all extraordinary and you deserve an awesome week. All right. I will be talking to you guys soon. I am getting a few more videos ready for you. I do have a couple of orders that are going to be coming in, so there'll be a couple more unboxings. There's going to be a completion video, so you get to see some of the projects that I have been working on. And, of course, more WIP N Chats. So, all right, you guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please like, subscribe, share, do all those YouTube-y things. And I will see all of you in the next one. Hugs, everybody. Bye-bye.